I've had a few. One I can think of in particular was a foreclosure deal. That was my first foreclosure deal. There's real people on the other side of these deals. So yeah, it feels good. Initially, they were like, yes, we can help. And then they came back a couple days later and were like, actually, we're at full capacity. We can't help. That moment, actually, I feel like is what cracked my whole journey open. I did what I knew. And that's really when it all clicked for me. I think I waited 3 days and I was like, this is getting much worse. Like it was spreading. She's like, definitely not allergies. I think we need to send her to dermatology at the Children's Hospital. Correct. So we don't just TC for profit, we TC for a purpose.
My guest is a person who saves the deal when it's falling apart, a transaction coordinator, and a SubTo regional leader. But that's not the fight that defines her. She's also a mom, turning her daughter's fight into a movement for kids everywhere. Jordan, welcome to Dream Start On.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Before any of this, what were you doing and what made you want more?
Before I joined SubTo, I actually owned my own travel business, booking other people's travel and planning their trips out and everything. And before that was just essentially a stay-at-home mom. Not just that, like stay-at-home moms are absolutely incredible, but I think that we were just ready to kind of start building our legacy. And I actually didn't know much about SubTo. My partner just kind of threw me into it and I just kind of took it and ran. So
then SubTo entered the picture. Tell me about that moment it cracked the door open for you.
I was pretty clueless when I first joined SubTo. I actually, like I said, didn't know much about it. We're told by our MSAs to make our intro post and I think Pace says like 50 friends. And so that was kind of what I started doing. I just totally clueless made that intro post, and it actually kind of makes me laugh going back to it now. I was just so excited and stoked to be there. And that's not a bad thing at all. But I think that the moment where I felt like it really cracked open for me is when I actually figured out the path that I wanted to be on. I initially this is when Pace was doing the elephant challenges, and I tried to dive right into multifamily elephant challenge, which multifamily is something that we would eventually like to own. But at the time, felt like a very big bite for somebody who didn't really understand. Like I was totally new to real estate, so didn't really know much about it. That was kind of the moment where I was like, I need to take a couple steps back and really figure out how these processes flow from start to finish, what makes a deal. And that's when I got going on my path as a transaction coordinator before Top Tier actually existed. So it was a lot of trying to figure out what a transaction coordinator is. How do we provide value? What is the actual process from start to finish? And I was attending just Zoom after Zoom, trying to kind of piece that together. And then had an investor come to me that was like, I need help with a deal. And initially we were going to take that to Pace's team. And so I could shadow how the transaction process goes from start to finish. And initially they were like, yes, we can help. And then they came back a couple days later and were like, actually, we're at full capacity. We can't help. And so I went back to this investor and I was like, so this is the deal. And he's like, you got this. And so that moment actually, I feel like is what cracked my whole journey open. He had full faith in me that I could get through the deal process. And so that's what I did. I did what I knew. And then when I felt stuck, I reached out for help where I was resourceful in our resources, and I got through that deal. And that's really when it all clicked for me. This is when I believe started to make sense. And the rest has kind of been history as far as the transaction coordination side goes.
What was that moment for you when they gave you the reins and you're like, uh-oh?
I was very nervous. I don't think that I had the confidence in myself. And the confidence in myself that he had in me. I think it was kind of like, all right, we're doing this. And just kind of like I jumped into SubTo. It was like, I'm going to jump into this and I'm going to figure it out. And so it was kind of scary, but I ended up just kind of pushing through that fear. And yeah, I think that confidence is something that builds, isn't something that you just necessarily have when you start. And so now my confidence has really grown from where I once was.
When that, looking back at that deal, is there anything you would have done differently?
Oh, so much. So much would have done so much different. We actually made a lot of mistakes along the way. And it was in a state where, there's not a whole lot of resources for creative deals. There wasn't really a whole lot of creative friendly title companies, and there wasn't a whole lot of creative friendly attorneys. And so having to source those and then ultimately kind of coach them through a process that I wasn't 100% sure on. And it was a hybrid deal, so a little bit more complex than just a straight SubTo or straight seller finance combines those pieces together. So one thing that I would have done differently was, we had in our resources, we had templates, and I'm going to put emphasis on templates for promissory notes and deeds of trust. And the reason that they're templates is because you're supposed to take those and bring those to an attorney who can, use that as a reference to draft what's necessary for a creative deal. We didn't know that those were templates. And so we actually ended up filling them out ourselves, give these over to title. And title is like, what is this? So that's when we were like, okay. I actually reached out to Molly. Molly helped me a lot through this first deal. And even when I felt really stuck with this attorney, she was just kind of giving me grief. I told Molly kind of what was going on, and she's like, let's hop on a call with her. And it was pretty incredible to see, for one, Molly has confidence. And so that's something that's like, I think inspired me throughout my journey. But she just kind of wizarded her way through this call with this attorney. And at the end, the attorney was like, okay, yep, got that. I'll get it done. So yeah, I think that's one thing that I would have done differently is probably not trying to draft those documents on our own. I've learned the importance of having an attorney draft specific legal documents. Yeah, it was so long ago. It's interesting to kind of reflect back on that deal.
Molly, that's Molly Tennant.
Yep, Molly Tennant.
Shout out to Molly, Pacerside rock star.
Yeah, she's amazing.
You're one that helps save deals when they're falling apart. Tell me about one that almost didn't close.
I've had a few. One I can think of in particular was a foreclosure deal where we thought ultimately it was going to end in a foreclosure, and the buyers were just kind of like, I'm not sure about this. They ended up coming back, and we ended up actually closing that in 5 days, which is, I think, pretty speedy to close a creative deal. On average, creative deals take, I'd say, 30 to 45 days to really go through the whole entire process, from contract to close, getting title work back, getting all the proper documents and disclosures drafted that need to be drafted. Not saying that it always takes that long, but I'd say it's probably a good timeline to give yourself for a creative deal. So the fact that we closed this one in 4 to 5 days was pretty sweet, and we saved the seller from foreclosure.
Was that your first deal you're saving somebody from foreclosure?
That was my first foreclosure deal, yes.
What was that feeling like knowing you saved somebody?
It was pretty incredible. A lot of gratitude that I felt. People don't ask to necessarily be in these situations, but knowing that we can come through and provide them a positive solution, and there's real people on the other side of these deals, so it feels good.
Was there something in the process that other people didn't notice that you noticed that was able to help save them?
I think just the really fast deadlines that you have when it comes to a foreclosure. Like you're essentially racing the clock for an auction. So the reinstatement letter was one thing. This was one thing that I felt. So there's a date on a reinstatement letter, and initially you need to have it like complete before that date. If you don't, then you have to request another one, and hopefully you're not, too close to the auction date at that point. But that was one thing, that the date on the reinstatement letter, that was ultimately where the buyers felt like, okay, like we're done here. But it ultimately came down to just requesting another letter and then getting everything resubmitted essentially.
There's a lot of moving parts to the letter, right? The reinstatement letter.
I'd say there's a lot of moving parts in general when it comes to creative deals, but especially when you add in a foreclosure component, yes. And here in Colorado, we actually have one of the only, I think we are the only public trustee system that's still active. And so rather than it going through, I mean, there's still an attorney involved, but rather than it just going through a foreclosure attorney, we actually go through the county, through the public trustee.
You're a SubTo regional leader for Colorado. What does that role demand from you that most people never see?
I'd say a lot of our time that it takes to dedicate it to new members and existing members and those who are just currently trying to find their way and their place in the real estate space. It's a lot of dedicating your time to help them get to where they also want to be. So
when people come to you because you're a regional leader, what would it be helpful for them to have when they ask you for help?
I usually take it back to the basics. So in our SubTo course, we have modules where you can get the very basics of, what SubTo is, what our community is. A lot of, I'd say, now being a few years into it, a lot of the basic knowledge that you would want to get going. So I usually refer people back to our resources and figuring out what their actual focus is going to be. I think it's really easy to get that shiny object syndrome with all of the other, like all of the different things that are happening within our community. Yeah. And so I think really like honing in on what it is that you want to focus on and then dedicating yourself a specific amount of time to really hit it hard on that specifically. And then once you get good at that, then spread your focus into other things that interest you and stuff. But I've learned that, when your focus is, this is what you want to do, but your focus is over here, it's not helping you achieve what you want to do. So
as a transaction coordinator, is your focus creative deals, foreclosures?
I can help with all of it. I would say I'm very well versed in creative deals. That's been the majority of my experience, but we've helped with traditional multifamily mobile home parks, RV parks. And I'm also a notary here in Colorado, so we kind of added that component into our TC business. And then one of my other TCs is a notary in Tennessee. So we really just try to be like resourceful on all ends. Another one of my TCs is also a lender, so we're essentially trying to be a one-stop shop.
How many TCs do you have in your team right now?
I have 3 TCs besides myself, so a team of 4 currently, and we're looking to expand that. So,
as a regional leader, when you set together meetups, how often do you do that, and where can people find information to attend the meetups?
Yeah, so we actually have here in Colorado 4 meetups monthly. We have one up in Fort Collins. Yeah, 4. One up in Fort Collins, one in Denver, one in Colorado Springs. And then we also have a Gator meetup that is in Littleton. You can find those events on our SubTo meetup map, but also we share them to meetup.com. And then there's two other SubTo leaders here with me in Colorado. We all share them to our personal pages and within the SubTo group and the free creative group. And so we try to have it kind of in all places. And then SubTo will send out emails to our new students here in Colorado. And so they try to include that information as well. And if they don't, then we kind of just respond with, what it is. Or if I see a new student, I'll reach out to them and provide them all of our meetups. I think it keeps it pretty simple because we have them at the same place in the same time every single month. So, for example, Denver is always the first Saturday at the Delta Hotel from 4 to 7 p.m. And so each of our meetups are on like a monthly schedule.
Part of the Dream Start On podcast is to start. And if you haven't started by getting your LLC, or if you need another LLC, use the link below to get with PCS, Prime Corporate Services, and they'll give you a consultation to walk you through getting your LLC. You can do it yourself, but they're going to walk you through it. They're not going to charge you extra than what you would pay doing it yourself. And they know how to set up the LLC appropriately to be protected, to get your operating agreement, and to make sure that you're coded correctly for the most business funding. Why do you want business funding? Because it doesn't affect your personal credit as much, and you can get so much more to help you scale faster, move faster, and grow faster. So use the link below to get your LLC set up with Prime Corporate Services. Now back to the episode. This whole next chapter starts with your daughter. Introduce me to her. What's her name? What's she like?
Yeah. So my oldest daughter, I've got 3 kiddos. My oldest daughter is Gracelyn. She is 7 years old, about to enter the 2nd grade. And she's honestly amazing. She has taught me, I'd say, everything that I know about being brave and strong. And she's honestly a sweetheart. So she is the oldest of 3 kids, and she's the best, I'd say the best big sister around. She really nurtures and tries to take care of her little siblings, and she's got a good heart.
How far apart are the siblings?
So Gracelyn is 15 months older than my son, Declan. So they're very close in age, and he's 6. And then my youngest is Oakland, and she is 3. So about a 3 and 4 year age gap between her and my youngest.
What about you? Do you have siblings? Where do you fall in line?
I do have siblings. I have 4 sisters. I've got an older sister, Kylie, and for the longest time, it was just her and I. And then when I was 16 years old, my dad had, well, not my dad, but his wife had my sister, Bella. And then when I was 26 years old, his wife had my baby sister, Haley. So I've got 2 younger and then 1 older.
Having younger siblings helps out a little bit with the having the child and kind of knowing what to do.
Yeah, I didn't actually really grow up with any of my siblings. So I am an only child with my mom. So with my mom, we kind of traveled all over the place. She was a traveling nurse for a long time. And I pretty much grew up with her, and I'd see, my siblings during the summertime and sometimes holidays. So, yeah.
It must have been hard being away from your siblings.
Yeah, it was hard, and also not really growing up with my dad too was a little hard. And now I'd say like our relationships, the relationships that I have with my siblings is different for sure. We're not like super, super close, but we chat every once in a while.
I think it's pretty normal. I think we see what's on TV and we think that's normal, but it's not.
Yeah.
Going back to Gracelyn, tell me about the day the JDM came into your lives. What happened?
Yeah. So we were actually at the playground, and we were getting ready to leave, and I saw a red blotch on the top of her nose. And I asked my partner, did she hit her nose on something? He's like, no, not that I'm aware of. And so just kind of kept an eye on it. And over the next day or two, it started to kind of spread and get worse. Now, this was during COVID, during the time of COVID. And so a lot of appointments were like telehealth. And so when I reached out to her pediatrician, they initially scheduled us a telehealth appointment, and it was not with the provider that she normally sees. And so we did like a video call, and she was like, oh, well, I think it's allergies, and I'm going to prescribe this cream. And if it doesn't get better in, I think she said like 10 to 12 days, then give us a call back. I think I waited 3 days, and I was like, this is getting much worse. Like it was spreading. And so called her back, and her pediatrician was able to actually get her in person for an appointment. And so we went in, and she was like, yeah, I think we need to, she's like, definitely not allergies. I think we need to send her to dermatology at the Children's Hospital. And so we got in pretty quickly to see dermatology. When we got to the dermatologist, they were like, yeah, I don't think this has anything to do with dermatology. We think she needs to get into rheumatology. And so if you know anything about rheumatology, it can be really, really hard to get an appointment with them. And they were able to see her pretty much immediately. And from there, they had to rule a couple of other things out. But from there, she got a diagnosis pretty quick, which is pretty unheard of in the world of juvenile dermatomyositis. It usually takes a while for kids to be diagnosed with JDM. So very, very grateful that, that whole process was pretty proactive, and honestly that I advocated for her because I just knew something was not right. Once they were able to confirm like her diagnosis, she started treatment pretty much immediately. She went in for an MRI. That's when they were able to confirm that she had muscle inflammation happening. And initially her treatment started with pretty high doses of steroids and methotrexate, which is essentially a low dose of chemo. We ended up having to administer the methotrexate to her weekly by shot. And then not too long after that, she actually started infusions, which were IVIG. And IVIG stands for intravenous immunoglobulin, which essentially when you go and donate plasma, they take that plasma and they spin the red blood cells out of it. So she's essentially getting like straight antibodies. And they, in the JDM world, call IVIG like liquid gold. So she was doing those every 4 to 6 weeks. And then we were giving her the methotrexate and then the steroids. And then she had medications to kind of support those medications. Some of the other symptoms that could essentially happen by her being on those steroids are brutal I think really anybody, but they really wreak havoc on little bodies for sure.
How old was she when this happened?
She was 2.
That was super difficult for her to be able to communicate any of it to you then, huh?
Yes, absolutely. She was actually not really speaking at that time. And it's actually pretty incredible. So to tell you a little bit about JDM, it affects the muscles, the blood vessels, and the skin. And your throat is a muscle, your heart is a muscle, your lungs are muscles. So it can affect all of those muscles. And I wholeheartedly believe that it was affecting her throat muscles because pretty much shortly after we started treatment, her speech took off. So she was able to, I'd say, communicate a little bit more.
Oh, it's excellent to hear that treatment was able to help her out with that. You're running deals, leading a region, and fighting for Gracelyn every single day. How do you carry all of that?
That's a great question. I just keep going. And honestly, that's what I tell a lot of people, just keep going. It all compounds one day. And yeah, I'd say all three of my kiddos are absolutely my strength to keep moving forward. But yeah, just wake up and keep going.
How supportive is the school?
Her school? Her school is pretty supportive. We moved almost a year ago. So where we were living up in the mountains here in Colorado, her school was very, very diligent about following kind of the care plan that we had for her. She doesn't have to have a whole lot of accommodations beyond when she goes out for recess, they need to apply sunscreen, and she needs to wear hats and essentially like the skin sleeves. And that's because her JDM is triggered by the UV rays of the sun. So we take just extra precautions, essentially. Her school up there also, because the JDM generally affects the muscles closest to your core, so the trunk muscles and your core muscles, and so it can be really hard for kids with JDM to walk, to get up, to run, to go upstairs, any of those kinds of things. And so she was having some hard time when she would like sit down in circle time at school, and so they accommodated and let her bring a chair to circle time so she could sit in a chair, because it was harder for her to get kind of up off the ground. And so they were really good about it. Now that we're at this new school, they were very diligent about applying the sunscreen pretty much every single day. And we basically just do everything we can to avoid a flare, because she's in what they consider right now. There's no cure for what she has, but with all of the treatment that we went through, we basically got her to a point of medical remission. And so now we do everything that we can to avoid her flaring back up, which, like I said, the sun is a trigger. So we take those precautions. But also illness can trigger flare as well. So there was one point in time where we had gotten her off of medications and gotten her to a point of stability. And then we all ended up getting COVID, and she flared back up pretty bad. And so it was kind of like essentially starting all over again with the treatment and everything. So, we just do what we can to avoid, as well as you can with two kids going to school, avoid the sickness and take those precautions in the sun, in the heat.
You turned that fight into TC for a cure. What are you building with that?
Yeah. So it's kind of actually a smaller scale to what I want to accomplish with investing in real estate. But ultimately we take a portion of our profit and we roll it back to the causes that are specifically dedicated to curing JDM. So one of those causes is, they're actually called Cure JM. And another one is the Myositis Foundation. But we'd like to take it beyond that and really pour into the causes that need it. So I feel like mental health and addiction are also two areas in our society, where people are there needs to be more awareness. I feel like they are slightly failed, and there's just like a stigma around it. And so ultimately what it comes down to is awareness. So, and acknowledging that it exists, it's there, it's real, just like JDM, and then giving back to those, not only just giving back to those causes, but we're trying to find other ways that we can contribute to making that better as well. So TC for a Cure directly pours into causes dedicated to curing rare diseases, mental health, and addiction.
Fantastic. Every transaction you complete, a portion of that will be a donation for those charities.
Yep, correct. So we don't just TC for profit, we TC for a purpose.
What would it mean to fully fund one of the researches?
I mean, that'd be astronomical. That'd be incredible. That's the whole goal. So, yeah, I think it would mean the world to not just Gracelyn and our family, but there are 5,000 kids here in the US that are diagnosed with JDM. So it would also, it would also mean, trying to think of the right word, almost like freedom. I feel like it'd be like freedom to all of those kids and their families as well. Because I know for us, our path has not been easy. It's been very hard, and JDM affects kids so differently. So the way that Gracelyn goes through it isn't necessarily the way that the next kid goes through it or the kid before her. So, yeah, I think it would mean a lot.
For someone listening right now who wants to help, what's the one thing they can do today for you, for the cure, for the cause?
Yeah, so we're actually working on getting a foundation built out. In the meantime, if you wanted to donate directly to CureJM, you could do that. It's just curejm.org. And you can also find their page by going to my social media pages and all of that. Otherwise, I'd say, utilize us for your TC services. So a portion of that can roll back to those causes. But yeah, I'd say that would probably be the best way to make impact, and totally open to, other ideas and stuff if somebody wanted to reach out directly.
For expanding on your team and to hopefully help you get more transactions and be able to help provide more donations, what type of team members are you looking for?
Well, first and foremost, I'm looking for those who align with our cause overall. People who are okay with a portion of our profits rolling back to these things that are bigger than us. Otherwise, our core values, transparency, honesty, just overall, like being a good person and doing good things is ultimately required on our team. We like to act ethically. We like to do things the right way. And so, yeah, I would say the ideal candidate kind of falls in line with our core values overall.
Jordan, thank you for letting us into one of the hardest parts of your life. What you're carrying and still showing up the way you do for the SubTo community and the Gator community, that's the whole thing. Here's the one ask. Go to the CureJM link in the description below. Give what you can. Help out the children, help out the people that need this. And if this moved you, hit like, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Share it with one person who needs it. Until the next time, keep building. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Be sure to catch this other episode to start your dreams and own your time like these other guests have.